that works.
Yeah, it's all good. And this transition post policing, post 33 years of it has been, challenging. And because we have so much of our identity wrapped up in the job, um,
Definitely
it's something.
definitely we can talk on about that as well, man. That transition
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
but you're really not out.
No, still helping, doing the things I do in the world, but still trying to maintain the relevance in the field and to try and help others out and just pass on those experiences and see where I've made mistakes and people can learn from those and all that kind of stuff that
Sure.
I think still works pretty well.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, Multiple Chiefs jobs. You've been in this thing almost 30 years now.
33 years I was a cop. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
And
been a
you
minute.
bounced between Missouri and Dallas,
Missouri, and then I was the chief. I went to the number
Colorado
two.
too, right?
Yeah, yeah, I was in the state capital, Missouri for almost 27 years of my career. Went to the number two position. Then had the opportunity to become the chief of police in Grand Junction, Colorado, all the way on the west side of the state, opposite of Denver, across the Rockies. Beautiful area.
Right.
Was there for 4.5 years and then came to Texas and hit about the 33, a little over 33-year mark, and thought, maybe there's some other opportunities out there that are a little different. And
Right.
here we are. Yeah.
Nice. And now you're getting ready to move back up to Kansas City.
Yeah, I've family and all the things up there, and we know Kansas City really well, and we love the Dallas Fort Worth area. It's been great for us, but eventually you sort of go to a place that just feels like the home piece because primarily of family being close and yeah, so we're excited about it. It's always a little nerve-wracking when you move and you pack up and you uproot yourselves. It's
Yeah, because
always
you haven't amassed anything, it's just a couple of it's like moving out of college dorm, right? Just a couple of boxes.
it's exactly what it's
Oh,
like moving out of a college dorm times
oh,
50, I
where
guess.
did all this crap come from?
Yeah. We've donated a lot this year.
I was
So it's
gonna
like,
say
oh yeah,
it's a good opportunity to go. Why do I still have that?
it's exactly it. It's exactly it. So you really prioritize what you need versus what you want.
Yeah, no doubt. No, and I'm
Yep.
sure some neighbors will be the beneficiary of the extra saw or the the cord of wood that's behind the house that really
Yeah.
doesn't.
We've consolidated, let's just say that.
All right, good. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's all good.
Um, what we're just rolling into it, brother. I
Sure.
was going to have this whole big. I'll record an intro. Um, 20 30 over 30 years, 33 years.
Yep.
Um, what are you left, but you really didn't leave because I know that you're still super involved in sharing and passing along experiences and being part of the solution for the IACP. And talk to me about that. Talk to me about your current position. And I want to talk about curve.org and and all these things that you got going on because we talk about the next chapter. You've got some, I don't want to say you've mastered it because it's not that easy. But that why hasn't gone away, man.
No, no, I think, despite the amount of time, and some people leave our profession, and I think for some people they leave with a level of bitterness towards it,
Oh,
you know?
right.
Yeah, I think it happens a lot, and I understand why that is because this is a tough job. This is one of the toughest jobs that anybody could ever have, but I think it's one of the most rewarding jobs that somebody could ever have too. And so for me, even though I've left wearing the badge and the gun and the vest and all the things, it doesn't mean that my passion and my drive for policing has left at all. I think it certainly continues. So I'll always be passionate about the profession because I believe in it and I believe in the people that sacrifice so much to do it. So that's always going to be something that's really near and dear to me, regardless of whatever role I happen to have in my life.
Was there a time where you could have seen yourself that disgruntled guy who was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah, totally. I think there's been I think 2020 was a hard year overall. I mean, not only just for the for the world's population, but for those of us in policing, but in policing leadership, where the target is clearly upon us, even though it's like, okay, that wasn't us. It didn't matter. And
Right.
you don't want to do this, the point to the next guy thing and just say, hey, look at him instead of me. It's an excuse in a lot of ways. But I think it was difficult because no matter what we tried at first, I think it was just felt like we were running up against a mountain, and it was just challenging, and you had to just dig deep within yourself. And fortunately, I was surrounded by just some incredible, not only people that I worked with at the time at the Grand Junction Police Department in Colorado, but also other people across the country, fellow chiefs, fellow leaders, fellow cops that I just knew that were so resolute that, what, we're going to get through this and we're going to do it together. And, our cause is just and noble,
Mm,
and we'll continue forward with it. So, there were times you're like, okay, no wonder recruiting is terrible, because people are like, why would I want to do that job? I mean, why would
right.
I want to be, plastered all over social media somewhere for nothing to do with me, or I make one wrong step that might be the most minor thing, but I can go make more money. I can have regular hours. I can not miss holidays. I can not be shot at, all the things.
Sure.
So I get it. But I
Could,
think
yeah,
for those of
not have
us,
my livelihood taken, not be
yeah,
incarcerated. I
yeah,
cannot be,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And in Colorado, with qualified immunity, all the things that happened at the time with the legislature moving so quickly after George Floyd, it was challenging to keep people interested in moving forward with why a career in policing. But I think the thing that pushed me, that felt that I was doing the right thing in my heart, was the fact that the people that were showing up still, despite all the noise, despite all the challenges, that they still either came to work every day and continued just doing a fantastic job, or we had applicants that said, I want to be here because I still feel like I can make a difference. And so
Right.
that's when you start to get to know the heart of people. And that to me is inspiring, and that's worth fighting for.
No doubt. And so being in that position, right? I mean, you're the boss. And so it's almost like if you take a knee, if you surrender, what the hell do
Right.
the rest of us do?
Yeah. Yeah, if not me, then who? And
Right.
I took a pledge, and nobody that ever goes to the police chief role was forced to do it. That's a decision. So when you make that decision, you put yourself out there, and you accept the fact that your lifespan in the role can be very short. That's just part of it. But while you're in the role, you have some responsibilities that you didn't have before, and you're willingly accepting those responsibilities. You have to stand up for your people. You have to advocate for what's right and what's honorable, and if you don't do it, then you're part of the problem, quite frankly. And chiefs, with due respect to the folks that are doing it that way, well, maybe not due respect, but I guess I don't have a lot of love in my heart for them. But people that are just gliding through and not making the changes and not supporting people, and not trying to build people up and prepare people for next level leadership, I think we're doing a disservice to those folks. So, yeah, I'm not that way. I was never raised that way. My dad was
Right.
never that way, and I know so many amazing mentors that I've had and colleagues that are very much not that way. They are the people that drive, the people that push, the people that challenge, and the people that rise above all the noise and still venture forth. And those are the folks that I idolize in that regard.
No doubt. Because I can tell you from being so I never rose above the rank of sergeant. And um,
Which is a great
I
rank, right?
I would also say that it's probably the most impactful rank.
Yep.
Because not only am I serving you, boss, I'm the conduit. I'm the connection to the troops. And I would argue that I have more of an impact in their lives than you would as being the chief. Um,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and that role, listen, I there were times in my career I was an awesome supervisor. There were times where I failed horribly and did not live up to the man that I should have been. But with that being said, I always it was difficult not to at times create an us versus them internally, because maybe the chief wasn't defending the troops. Maybe the chief, wasn't doing what was in the best interest of the agency. but was in the best interest of him staying in that position. And so during those times, um, I want to think that's the beginning of my awareness that there was toxicity, and the problems wasn't coming from outside.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was like an aha moment in Lauren, and at least it was for me in my capacity. Like, they're not the enemy. They're doing what they do. Why aren't we circling the wagons here? Why aren't we having those conversations? And I gotta say, and some amazing leaders across the board, but almost for every awesome chief that was willing to deal with the situations from a factual basis, you had those that for the self-serving, just needing to stay. I always thought that if you were going to be a chief, it should be you should one of the prerequisites should be you need to be this can't be your source of income. Like, you need to be able to walk away from this job,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And that was, I guess, maybe the beginning for me to really understanding that if that top down approach isn't going to work, if we're gonna put so much emphasis on leadership at the top levels, really firing on all cylinders, what happens when that fails? And that's why I've started this kind of, I don't want I started. That's why my focus is really on the individual.
Yeah.
Like, you're part of this organization, and I don't care what anybody else is doing, but there's a moral compass. There's a way that you proceed and carry yourself that transcends anything else going on. What are your thoughts on that, Doug?
Well, I want to go back to the first thing you said about the sergeant position because I think my opinion through all of my years of experience and my own thoughts are that there are two most influential positions in the police department. They are the sergeant and they are the field training officer. And I say that because I know as chief, and I went through every rank, did all the things. I understand the impact that I can have, but I'm not out there on the daily with the women and men that are serving. The sergeant is, and the sergeant has that pulse, that finger on the pulse, and has the ability to send information up and relay it back down and really get an accurate read on things more than a lieutenant or a captain or a DC or a chief ever would. That's just the nature of it. And the field training officer, I mean, you're training the future of the agency. You're literally molding the future of the entire organization. And that is a tremendous power. And so you want to have the right people for the right reasons in those positions. As a chief, most importantly, you want to listen to the people in those positions. You want to hear very candidly what their thoughts are on how things are going, what kind of improvements we need to make. And I think for some chiefs, that's uncomfortable because it feels like, well, I'm the chief. I shouldn't have to ask that. I should know it,
Mm.
or I don't want to hear that, I'm the chief. I'll make the decisions, which is a archaic at best way of approaching it. But imagine if you sat down with your sergeants regularly or your FTOs, for example, and so how's things going? Like, let's talk about what we're doing here and how well we're doing it and what are some things that we think we can improve upon. And let's talk about that at all levels and just give me honest feedback. It's meant to be constructive and it's meant to be helpful because we're kind of all on the same team, like you said earlier, or we're supposed to act like we are.
Right.
The defensive ends didn't care what the linebackers were doing. I'm like, I don't even like them. I don't want to work with them. What if they didn't coordinate? I mean, you're going to get some really terrible football teams.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's for sure. So I think listening and really understanding at all levels and the value of listening and hearing input from all levels can be so helpful. And I've been lucky in my time that I've probably taken some risks and opened myself up to, all right, let's just have the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the things that I did at my previous police department here in Texas that I think worked really well. I heard some rumblings amongst some of our lateral officers that had transferred, excuse me, to our department, and just feeling like they weren't a part of decision making, they weren't a part of the process. And so just called a meeting with all the laterals, no other sergeants, lieutenants, captains, nobody else, just me and them. I'm like, just let me have it. Let me just tell me what's on your mind. This is a free space, and I got it. And it wasn't directed at me; it was directed at some of the systems that could maybe use some work or other things. But the feedback I think was so helpful, and we made some changes after that because there were things that I didn't see from my level
Hmm.
at all, but they sure did. And it's like, okay, this makes sense. But they're the practitioners; they're the ones that are doing the job. So what if we listen to the people that actually did the job to try and help them do their job better? I mean, I think that's what we're there for. But you're right, you make chief, you better be ready to walk away. And if you're doing it just for the pay and the status, you're in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. One of the things that I liked about what you just said about calling everybody together. Um, I think we do a horrible job at asking why. And when you do ask why, one, I think it shows everybody that you actually care. And then it obligates you. See, if you're going to ask why, then it obligates you to do something with the answer that you receive.
Yeah.
And that I think for I spent the entirety of my 30 years at one agency, and so there's some good and bad about that. That you don't get a lot of diversity of opinion because
Right.
it's this way for 30 years. And it's a sheriff's office. So the minute it's not this way, they clean house.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
start all over with a whole new command every 4 years. It's difficult to get into. What are we doing this week? What's the flavor? What where's our moral compass? What direction are we heading this week? Um, but I think the one thing that, at least from a leadership standpoint, whether it's the sergeant asking the deputy or the chief asking the lieutenant, is why did this happen? Why are the troops failing this way? Why are we not doing? And then, oddly enough, Doug, when you ask why, somebody gives you an answer.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that is simple of a concept. If I don't ask why, I don't have to change.
Yeah.
I don't have to be concerned if I don't ask why. And asking why, man, I think moves mountains.
It does. I think you're absolutely right with that. And I think for some people, it's fear of what you
Mm,
might hear because
yeah,
invariably for some people, I think ego comes into it at some point.
probably.
If they're unhappy about something, it must be because of something that I'm doing as the chief or I'm doing as the deputy chief or whatever command level you happen to be at. But it's not about that. It's about just just stepping back from that piece of it and taking yourself out of the equation and just say, let's look at the situation and look at it, objectively and talk about if I were in their shoes, how would I experience this or what would I look at? But you said something that I think is very key. When you ask the why and when you take these risks, you better be prepared to do something with it potentially. And that's not to say that, for example, the lateral meeting that I talked about, it's not that say that, well, we need this equipment, we need that equipment. It's not like, oh, why didn't you just tell me? I'm just going to get my credit card and go do it. It's say, okay, well, let me explain the budget process to you. And here's the why of how this works. And here's why we prioritize our asks. And here's how that whole thing goes. And more often than not, they're like, oh, I had no idea. That's
I
how it
didn't
works.
know because I'm not the chief. Right. I
Right.
didn't know because I don't do budgets. Right. And you
Yeah.
let them know.
Yeah. And the more you tell people about it
Yeah.
and the more you keep things less in the dark, like it's, behind these quote unquote, secret squirrel type meetings, the
Yeah.
command staff meetings, but, publishing command staff meeting minutes, things like that. Here's what we talked about. Okay. I mean,
Right.
it's like, well, we're all kind of working together. We should be. And I told, I had a lateral officer when she came to talk to me about some things. I told her my philosophy is that, look, I work for you just as much as you work for me. I know that we have different ranks, but I'm here to help you succeed. You're here to do the right thing by the community and do the right thing by the honor that in the code that you took and you swore to. And if we were to work together on that stuff, I mean, imagine what could be accomplished,
Hmm.
kind of thing. And I realize maybe it's just, it's so, I don't know, Pollyanna in some ways, but really it's not, and it's super basic. And I think we overthink that sometimes. Just do the work for the right reasons. It's that simple.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. Um, and that creating that part, I think maybe there's a fear that if we create a partnership, like we're human beings. The only reason, listen, the difference between you and me is that ultimately you're responsible for everything that happens.
Mm-hmm.
The, other than other than that, we're the same. You
Yeah.
have more responsibility. Um, but I always thought, and we sit back, and I think leadership has gotten a really bad rap over the last several years, since 2020. Um, and I want your thoughts on this. I use the Jack Kelly analogy.
Okay.
I'll give you my dad, right? Uh, old Irish guy, hard worker, two, three jobs, always put two kids through college, never had a real conversation with his son. Never. I always wanted him to, but he didn't have the skill sets. He didn't know how to have those conversations. Wasn't in his DNA. He never had those conversations with his dad, and it was just the way it was. And so I use that analogy with established leadership,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not because they don't want to, it's because it's hard for them to value self-care when they don't even know what the hell it looks like, when they can't lead themselves in that regard. And so we're asking a lot from our from leadership, expecting just because they are older that they know.
Yeah,
That's a flawed philosophy.
it is. Well, I mean, when I started and, not, well, I guess it has been a minute or two, but I mean, when you talk about wellness, things like wellness, that was not a thing
Listen,
back in the day.
I'm going to stretch. You and I probably started about this. I started in
Yeah.
'91.
Yep. 90 for me.
Okay,
Yep.
so we're cut from the same cloth when it comes
Yep.
to what we knew and what we don't know.
Yeah. And you're the only wellness that was being talked about is whether or not you get to work out in the gym before or after shift, or maybe some on time shift. That's the only wellness, stay
Right,
in shape so you can go chase after the bad guy and be in a bar fight and all the things.
right.
Um, but you never ever talked about any sort of psychological stuff or post traumatic stuff. As a matter of
Goodness.
fact, when the rookie came on shift and there's a body or an autopsy, he's like, well, get the rookie over there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
you're,
instant
yeah.
exposure automatically.
Bring your
Yeah.
trainee over. I got something for him.
Yeah, exactly. And you were exposed to the worst as it, it's this sort of, well, I get the point to an extent.
It was the
Sometimes,
intent, though. The intent wasn't to,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I think that's something that we've grown better with through the years. We're still not where we need to be, but it's such a huge deal. And I just really feel like 2020 messed everybody up in some way, shape, or form. I think people changed dramatically. Human beings and humankind, I think, changed after 2020, just because of the isolation piece, because of the unknowing, because of what was taking place, because of the overabundance of social media, one way or the other, on everything. And what do I believe? What do I not believe? It was just. I think 2020 was difficult, and I
We
think
left we left with more questions than answers, didn't we?
we did, and I think but I think it did open up the fact that people were going through some stuff, and we had to be much more open about it. And working on wellness initiatives for all the years that I was on the job, and even really through ICP, the work I did on the wellness piece, um, that became so important and almost one of the biggest focuses. that we had within the entire organization. Everybody wanted to talk about wellness. I mean, there's a conference based on wellness now with ICP that's in its sixth or seventh year now,
Right.
and it's getting huge. So people want to talk about those kinds of things. But you're right, the skill set was never there because they were never taught it. It was, rub some dirt in it and let's go, next call. I mean, suck it up, Buttercup. That was the mantra of the time, and now it's changed so much. But having the skill set, like you mentioned, to talk through things and realize that different people react differently to stuff. And I'm not talking about coddling or patting people on
Of
the
course
head and
not.
giving and a participation award. That's not at all what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is understanding how to reach out to people and make sure that you connect on the level that really brings about a level of empathy that's appropriate for the situation, that can help people move through, that can help build trust, that can help build rapport, and help us all just still do our jobs, which is just a very, very difficult job in the first place.
Right. Yeah. I when I present, I say, hey, there's no crying in police work, man. Stone cold. But when we're done doing the job and we're safe,
Yep.
we can be human at that point.
Yeah.
We can't be human when we're doing difficult things. But this that switch, right? That okay,
Yep.
hey, um, that was messed up. That was a messed up call. That did keep me up all night. Uh, what are we gonna do about it so I can go to bed and not cry?
Yeah.
Let's have these conversations and let's bring in the resources that we need to make these conversations not a big deal.
Yeah. And I think we've been hesitant to do that because it's kind of like rolling on your back and showing your underbelly kind of thing. It's like you feel like somebody's going to take attack. You make attacks. You feel like you're going to be viewed as less than, particularly if it's as a chief. If you become vulnerable and talk about, look, I've gone to some counseling sometimes. People are like, oh, well, are you fit to be chief? Can you make those
Oh, see,
decisions?
see, see, that's the home run for
It,
me.
it, it's
That's
crazy.
the
Yeah.
home run for me. A chief saying that was effed up, and I am not okay with it. And uh, I need to talk to somebody that's a hell of a lot smarter than I am on how I negotiate this in my mind. Man,
Yeah.
whoa! Did everybody just you could feel the collective sigh of relief? Like, oh, okay. So the boss is green lighting
Yeah.
me getting some help. Um, what do you say to the listen? And I always, when I talk, I say, listen, you don't always have to go through your agency to get help, right? I mean, if the culture isn't one of
Right.
support, because there are some agencies out there that are just. I spoke with a chief from Forest Grove, Oregon. They every 5 years they put their guys on a 30-day sabbatical, give them $2,500. The only caveats, they're not allowed to bring a work phone or work computer with them wherever they go. And I said, hey, Chief, tell me that again, because I think I heard you wrong. Right. And I'm standing in front of him. I go, where the hell did you get this idea? Nike, corporate America. That's what
Yep.
they do for their people. I went, I would, I almost fell over. I said, so we can do these things for our people. We can create an environment, and you go from that chief to the agency where if you raise your hand and you say, I want to talk to somebody because I'm struggling, they take you off the specialized unit and they bet
Yep.
you're looked at as a liability, and there's punitive.
Yeah. You feel like you're in trouble.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like, it's the same umbrella, right? We all work in this space. Two dramatically, radically different approaches to taking care of their people. And you say to yourself, you want to pull your hair out and scream and go, it's the same job, whether it's Oregon or Miami, whether it's up in Vermont or down in Texas. So why is there such a disparity? Why is there such a difference on how we treat our people when it
Mhm.
comes to, let's just say, a mental health struggle?
Yeah, I think it all boils down to culture. And, we talked about it a little before, but the culture is key. And, the chief that's progressive and thinks outside the box at non-traditional ways to look at how do I really foster that culture where people feel like they're able to they're able to actually get to their very best because they feel like the agency believes in them and then supports it, backs it up. The sabbatical thing, I've heard it in a couple of places now where you're off for X amount of days, and I had a standing rule with my former deputy chiefs, and said, if you take vacation, you better not take that work phone, and you better not take that computer. And if I get an email from you that's work related, we're gonna have a conversation. And
Yeah,
I meant it not to be
yeah,
punitive or mean, just like go with your family and just be. Because when you do that and you unplug and you recharge, then you come back so much better than before because you've been able to, fully recharge the batteries in a way that, if we ever get to the point where if I take vacation from a police department, no matter my rank, doesn't matter.
right.
And if I feel in my heart, well, I just feel guilty about it because, what's going to happen? If we're at that point where one person can actually change the fate of an entire police department while you're on vacation, I think we're in trouble because
We've
that
all
means
failed miserably.
yeah, that means you have no bench. That means you're the only person doing anything good, and we all know that's not the case. So I think
Correct.
that's the big challenge. But the cultural piece is so important to understand. How do we build those cultures? And it takes time and it takes effort, and it's never built overnight, as
No,
opposed to the chief that just says, this is the way we're going to go, and yeah, so it's difficult, and I think it's
certainly didn't
taking
get messed
time.
up overnight.
No, 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 no. This has been going on for quite some time, which is, why some of the stuff we're doing with Simon and Simon Sinek and the Curve and that kind of work, I think is something I think is very much a passion project for me because we're looking at leadership from so many different levels, whether it's corporate and non-traditional approaches through books and things. You be like, why are we talking about a book that has nothing to do with policing in police work? And then you start to explain it and start to go through it. And there's these aha moments where people have these, it's literally a light bulb goes off above their head, like, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. I didn't think about it that way. But it's just like life, right? You get to meet all these people and that come into your life. They have different backgrounds, different perspectives. They look different, they act different, but you learn so much from them if you're willing to sit and learn and listen, and you grow from that, and they grow from you too. It's the same way with leadership and learning in what we do. It's the same exact concept. Are we open to it? And then how do we use that to make our work that much better?
Are we open to it? Are we open to knowing that we don't know?
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow for people whose job description basically says you know it all.
Yeah.
Like everybody calls on you, Doug, to solve the problem. You don't ever show up and go, I don't know. Right? You always have the answer. And so maybe it's given permission to you not to have it.
Yeah. I think that's the case. And any chief, that he or she thinks they know everything is,
Mm,
I don't think you're paying attention because
no.
you don't. I think that's why it's great as a chief that I think in my career, I was lucky enough to surround myself with people that weren't yes people.
Mm.
And I specifically did not want people on my exec team that would just say, "Oh yeah, yeah, great idea," and just
You would have
blindly.
loved me then.
Oh yeah, exactly. But I had people that would, it was always respectful, and I'd toss it out there. Let's
Right.
have a discussion about this. And many times the discussion was like, "Yeah, I didn't think about that. Let's go this route." Or, "Great point. Let's go this route." And that meant even with like PIOs, public information officers on a command staff. I mean, there's a view there that sometimes you don't think about, but you have all these different views from different people, and listening to that and hearing those types of things can move you forward and make you that much better in an organization if you're willing to listen.
Yeah, it's not, it doesn't take much, man.
No.
Removing yourself from the conversation, like you're not, it's not about you, Chief. It's not about you. It's about getting as much information so we can make an informed decision that is the best decision.
Right.
Um, and I think the minute you start making it about you, that's that slide where the right decision, we can't find our ass with both hands because the focus is off. But in creating that environment where, hey, no, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me your thoughts on this situation. And that in that regard, you don't need to know everything. You just need to surround yourself with all these
Yeah.
subject matter experts. And so, you know what? Hey, I'm going to take everything that you say into consideration, and we're going to come out with the best solution for this situation.
Yeah,
Um,
and we're not talking, obviously, I think everybody knows we're not talking about like critical incidents because we've all
yeah,
been through those things, and
sure.
this the SWAT standoffs, all the stuff where you have to make decisions. And yeah, if I'm the SWAT commander in charge, then ultimately it's my responsibility, and I'm going to make those decisions. It's not time to say time out. Hey, bad
Right.
guys that are holed up in there with the guns, time out. We're going to call a huddle out here and make some
Yeah.
decisions. You good? You make those decisions, and you're making them quickly, and yeah, you get through it, and it's stressful, but it's that's part of the gig. It's the it's the Monday morning or the Monday afternoon command staff meetings where we're all sitting around a table that we have time to really discuss things, and that's what we're talking about.
And
Yeah,
you got anybody got anything? And there's crickets.
yeah, that's the
No,
worst.
not helpful. Not
Yeah,
helpful.
that's the worst. That is the worst. Yeah, I always would dread if that ever happened, and then you have to pull people aside and go, you paying attention here? Let's try something new. And
Yeah.
yeah, but
Is
it's
that
culture. I think it goes back to culture and building culture, and I don't think we've not paid much attention to it formally in police agencies. Informally, yeah, and I remember distinctly being a patrol sergeant, which by the way was probably the most fun rank I was at, and being on the grave night, the graveyard shift, and working with just an incredible group of guys and gals, and having the time of my life, because we were such a cohesive team. I mean, we did things after work, and choir practice, all those kinds of
yeah,
things that
man.
I'm not sure if it's still a thing or not
I
today.
listen, I'm out there with the troops and I tell them, you guys get together, you have shift parties, you have I think that's one of the listen, there was a lot of dysfunction that went if we can
Sure.
clean that up a little bit, but the idea of doing things together with families,
Yeah.
I was Uncle John to a lot of kids, man. And I think that part of culture. I think that just shifts the dynamic and the responsibility of caring for each other when we get back to those kinds of things. But everybody's got a million things going on, man. It's almost like if we're not intentional about spending time outside of this thing of ours with the people that literally we hold their lives in our hands and vice versa. I think that missing component. It's one part of
Yeah.
us building a stronger culture.
Yeah. And I think a lot of today's workforce too. I mean, when we look at people that we would hire, you're not necessarily looking for the yes, I'm signing to XYZ police department for the rest of my life kind of thing. Whereas before, I mean, 27, you and I both spent a long time, over 2 decades, almost 3 decades, both of us at one agency in our career. And I don't think you see that as much anymore. You see, I'll be here a couple of years, or I might be here 5 years. Then I may go to another agency, or I might just get out of policing altogether. I might do something different. And so I think the expectation and that willingness to stay that length of time is just different now than it was
Is
because
that
of the
because of
workforce.
is that because of our profession, or is that the individual and their like their take on it?
It's a great question. I don't know that I have the answer to it. I think it's Um, I think people that join policing and stay the longest in one way, shape, or form are the ones whose hearts and minds truly are in it for the right reason. I think some people come in and they do a great job for the 3 or 4 years they're in it, but ultimately they decide it might not be for them for whatever reason. Maybe it's too much time away from the family, maybe it's whatever else, and that's a personal preference and a priority that okay, great, I get it. But again, we have to have people that are out there that are willing to sacrifice, and I'm sure you and I both probably missed a lot of holidays, a lot of games, a lot of
Missed a lot of
countless.
everything, man.
Yeah, you missed a lot of everything. But we did it for what I think is a greater purpose that was there to really help a greater good. And those sacrifices, while difficult, they were with intent and they were with purpose. They weren't just casual sort of, I don't want to be there. It's like, no, I need to be at work. And it's the night shift and I'm running solo with minimum staffing tonight because it's Christmas,
Right.
but somebody's got to be out here. And it's my turn up and here I go. And you go out and do it, and you do it for a reason because people out there need protected. And knock on wood, the bad thing happens. Thank God you're there.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a tough dynamic because you want to think that if culture was different, more engaging, more if we how many times have you heard the analogy about recruitment and retention in the Marine Corps, right? That they don't have an issue, right? Because it's belonging to something special, which I
Mm-hmm.
think we've gotten away from, right? And so there's this push to kind of I hope to make this thing of ours special again.
Yeah.
And then does that does because you're part of something special and it's just not another job, does that keep people around longer?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think we are slowly making our way back into something special. There was a dip there for a while, and it really almost started in Ferguson to some extent back in 2014. I mean, there were three major events in my and your career, really. You've got
Yeah,
Rodney King, and then you had Ferguson, and you had, George Floyd. So those three times brought such challenges. Rodney King when we started that area and
sure.
the whole LA riot stuff. And then Ferguson. I mean, I was in Missouri. I was in the state
I was
capitol
going to
during
say
during
I
Ferguson.
I was in Alton.
Okay, yeah, you're
I
right across the
presented it.
way.
I presented in Alton this year,
Yep.
and that was one of the things I was like, oh, really close to Ferguson here.
Yeah.
We're not far down the road.
Yeah, we were directly involved with Ferguson. As a matter of fact, the Journey for Justice, which was the march from sponsored by the National NAACP, came from Ferguson to Jeff City, my jurisdiction, and I was the incident commander for that. And that was in December.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, that's what the chief told me. He goes,
Yeah,
"You're in
Tag,
charge."
you're it.
But you know what? And we knew all eyes in the country were on us
Sure.
because our community thought everything was just even going to burn. But
No,
I worked with so many great people, and you just put people in the right positions, and it all went great for us. But it was a time where it's just difficult because people are like, why do I want to do that when I can do something different? But I think we're rebounding, and social media has been the worst with us, whether it's the First Amendment auditors, the people that have paid YouTube subscribers to them and all the things. It's like, what are we
right,
doing here, folks?
right.
It's not a, and it's not good with anything. Cancel culture, or even beyond policing. Your company does one thing that somebody doesn't like, and all of a sudden you've
Forget
got
it. Yeah,
protesters.
good luck. Yeah,
So I think there's that, but I think we are coming back. I mean, the recruitment numbers are going back up, and I think people understanding that if we don't, I mean, look at it in some states where they're reversing district attorneys or mayors that have let things go so badly that are like, we need some law and order, and we don't mean martial law, we just mean good
like
policing.
how about like people consequences for actions?
Right. I mean, people that shoot people go to jail. I mean, I don't know who thought that. What a crazy
Stop that
concept.
crazy talk, Doug.
Right. But
Oh,
we do it well, and we do it professionally all the time. We do it ethically, and
all right.
and all those things. And if we can continue to do that and build ourselves back up, man, I think we're on the way back up. Like I said before, I'm so passionate about what we do, and anytime I see an officer, always thank them and whatnot. Even
Yeah,
I know I'm not doing it anymore, but I sure am appreciative of what they do.
I I really think our best days are ahead of us still.
I hope so.
I believe that in my heart. I believe that it's knowing that I don't know, but man, look how much we've learned and garnered over the just the 30 years that you and I have been doing this. We know what works.
Yeah.
See, this is the great place to be is like, all right, when I did that, it turned out horribly. But when I did, when I chose door number two, tough road, but it worked. It worked. And so having perspective of what works, what doesn't work, the conversations and the things that we need to be doing to support our people, it's no longer a mystery, man.
Yeah.
And so getting people to embrace that, um, it may take a little bit, but there's something to embrace.
Yeah.
And I think that's the light, man. That's the light at the end of the tunnel that we know what works. Um, we know like it's not about preparing our people tactically. Like tactics are tactics. It's about preparing them mentally, physically,
Yep.
emotionally, spiritually. And I think we're finally understanding that tactics are going to work. It's the situation's going to dictate tactics, but we've got to spend more of our time and energy and efforts in the individual. And I think that shift is finally taking place where not addressing that's neglecting that for 30 years has brought us to a crisis point.
Yeah. And we see it all the way to the extremes of, officers still taking their lives and all the things that are taking place with that. And it's just, those are so preventable and on so many levels. It's never completely preventable, but you want to make sure that you put all the pieces in the space to try and minimize that ever happening as much as possible. Obviously, it's dangerous enough out there, with all the things that we deal. We just had an officer ambushed on the east side of Dallas not too long ago, shot and killed, just
Yeah,
ambushed, and and so it's dangerous enough as is. We don't
yeah,
need to add that danger internally and be less supportive. I mean, we're really truly doing a disservice for folks that are out there doing it. So kind of wrapping your arms around a little about that, about solving that problem, making sure that wellness is a priority and we take care of each other the right way,
no
is
doubt.
important. Yep.
Yeah, and it's when anytime anybody says we need to take care of each other, we're not saying
Right.
we're not but this is where people have watched too many movies. We're not saying that we accept unacceptable behavior. we're we're
Yeah.
we're we're saying quite the opposite, that we don't accept.
Right.
The way I take care of you is to hold you to a standard, to
Right.
to not accept unacceptable behavior, and to have tough conversations.
Yeah.
um and the quicker we can start doing that and embracing that, um I think that redefines caring in this profession. I
Yeah.
I care about you, Doug, enough to have a conversation with you that might ruin a friendship.
Those are
It
the
might,
hardest, right? Aren't those the
but
hardest conversations
but
to have?
but
Yeah.
but 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 my hope is that it won't. But if it does, and it impacts you the way I hope it to, then that's still a win,
Yeah.
right? It's still a win, and I think that that's hopefully the road that we're on. Is that um I've never been, this huggy, touchy. I could give a shit, man. But when it comes to taking care of our people, fanatical.
Yeah.
Because I think that's we've gotten to such an extreme situation where we have ignored, and again, not intentionally, man, but how it happens, it's kind of a moot point. It happened.
Right.
So I think it didn't get messed up overnight. It's not going to get fixed overnight, but with the same level of commitment and passion, um, we need to have that commitment to each other. And I maybe you've heard this over the course of your career, but I remember distinctly being told by command that it's none of your business. What goes on in John Kelly's life outside of this agency is none of your business. And I think that adopting that over the years, knowing that where we falter, where we fail, where we struggle, more often than not, has nothing to do with the job. It's everything else.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on us making it some of our business?
Well, I think it's definitely part of our business, and I don't mean, the really the personal things that are invasive or intrusive. That's not what we're talking about. What I am talking about is making sure that we see the signs and we look out one another, because sometimes decisions are made, and there are things that people start down a path that are absolutely preventable. And um, knowing your teammates, knowing your colleagues well enough where you can recognize those signs, and then, as you mentioned earlier, having that tough conversation. Something as simple as, hey, did you stay up late last night drinking because you still kind of smell like it? I mean, I know this is maybe a minor thing, but nonetheless, even paying attention to that stuff, just say, hey, paying attention to what's going on here, and everything okay? Because usually that's a sign of something.
Right.
And then getting involved in that kind of thing. And it's not like policing is the movie Training Day. I mean, okay, great
Right.
movie,
Right.
enjoyable. I love to hate Denzel Washington in it, but
Right.
all the things. But it's not. That's not. That's not what we do. And
Right.
we don't want. The funny thing is most people, many people, may rephrase that, don't understand that what cops don't want other. They don't want bad cops in the
Of course
profession.
not.
I mean, how would you like to work in a job where a cop 2 states away does something and it's on the front page of a news or CNN or whatever, pick your news agency, doesn't matter,
Yeah.
and you don't see, ex grocery store owner I mean, and I realize it's not the same, or, but we do that accountability. So with that comes the responsibility that we all want to uphold the honor of what we do. So I think that for us, it's just a matter of having that bravery to be involved with one another and to know one another and to see the signs. And then if you see something, get ahead of it, because maybe, just maybe, you might head off a problem before something goes horribly south.
Right.
And you were talking earlier a little bit about, admitting, getting counseling, whatever else. I mean, there were instances that I've worked through with my colleagues at the agencies where I've worked, where there's been an issue of maybe alcohol or whatever else, pick one,
Yeah.
that are personal. But instead of punishing that person, you say, all right, we're gonna work with you on this, and we're going to get you to a place where you can get some help with that,
Right.
because we're here for you and we want to back you up because we believe in you and what you do. And imagine how that would feel versus the I'm ostracized, and if I dare say something about it, then I'm off the SWAT team. I'm off the
Right.
negotiator team. I'm out of whatever unit that it happens to be, or I'll never get promoted. I mean, that tells you,
You
then
just
don't
you just
then don't talk
described
about
you
it.
just described my entire,
Yeah,
my entire run. Right.
yeah, yeah.
And
Why
and it's
why would you talk about it if you're going to get penalized for it? Like, why?
why would I
That's the
raise my
opposite.
hand? Why would I
Yeah,
raise my hand and say I need help?
yeah,
And that's right back to culture, man. What is this culture? What do we do with the? I always loved when somebody would say to me, you do everything 100% right. We'll always have your back. Oh, if I do everything 100% right, I don't need you to have my back, man. What about when I do it 80% right, 85% right, and I need you to have my back because I messed up this 15%.
yeah,
That's when I need you to come in and go, hey, you know, you're gonna get smacked a little bit, but we got you, and we're gonna, well, okay, uh, you know, um, getting back to asking why, that guy that comes to work who's nasty, grumpy, you know, outwardly appears that he doesn't want to be there, but instead of somebody saying, hey, John, why are you always in a way, man, like, who pissed in your Cheerios to, because you don't ever find out that he's caring for an elderly parent that's got Alzheimer's,
sure.
right? And so when he's not with his parent taking care of them, he's got to be here. I'd be pissed off too, right? But we don't ask why, so we don't ever get that guy some help. And we
Yeah,
just, and so that level of engagement, that caring about what happens when you're not here, um, I think in my heart of hearts that's the missing component to us bringing culture back to a place where this thing of ours is special.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying on that. It's tough, and everybody reacts differently, and some people are more guarded than others, and
Right.
some people just I definitely think that people have changed so much in the last couple of years, and it's been good in a lot of ways, but in some ways it's been really really bad. And I think as you look within an organization, you mention the ability to fail but be supported, and I think one thing that I've kind of held as a center point of my leadership team and the expectation was, look, when we bring people on board, and I would always say to new hires whenever I brought them in, first, don't ever lie,
Yeah.
because the moment you lie, we're done. I don't know what else to do with you at this point.
Can't
But
help you
with
if you lie.
Yeah, but with that, own your mistakes,
Right.
and I would tell them you are going to fail a bunch. I fail all the time. I mess up. I forget to do something, all the things. But it's okay to do that because you're human. But our culture is to allow you to fail forward. And when you do that and you learn and you own it, because you got to own it,
Right.
and then you learn from it, that's the point of growth. I mean, if and so I think if you norm of you're going to fail, but we're here to support you when you fail, because you will, and every one of you in the
Right.
department is going to fail, all the way to the chief, all the way to it doesn't matter who. We're all going to fail. We're going to make mistakes. Is owning it first and foremost,
Mm-hmm.
and then learning from it, and then having that support around you to say, all right, how can I improve, and
Right.
being open to it. So I think that's key.
That, that that sets realistic expectations.
Yeah.
Uh, and obviously, I had always said, listen, whatever you do, don't lie. The thing you lie about isn't the issue; it's the lie,
Right.
right? Like you'll never get terminated for the fender bender at 3 in the morning. You'll get terminated for lying about the fender
Yeah.
bender at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
So don't be, just remember that it's not as big of a deal as you've just made it out to be in your mind.
Yep.
Um, and,
And I
and
can I can think of several instances where I've had to make decisions about people that have I wanted to literally sit across from them in a hearing and go, I know you're lying. Please stop. Let's rewind this 10 minutes and let you do this over, because you're a good cop at your heart,
right,
but you keep holding on to this lie. Like, we we know it's wrong. Why don't you just admit it and do it, and just own it, and we can get past it?
sure,
But you can't, and you lose good people over that are, man, I guess maybe not so good after all, because they can't have the integrity piece. But
right,
I think that's the if I, as I look back in my career, I think that's one of the biggest pieces where I look and say, and I take it on myself a little bit. Say, how did I fail this person? How did I not help them some way? And maybe it's nothing, but still, you wonder, well, what could I have done different to try and head this off? Could I have been more open about the failure piece? Are they afraid they're going to get fired if they don't
right,
tell the lie? All the things, and it's just like, what's that look like? Because it's just it's unnecessary shame that, like the fender bender is a prime example of.
right, right.
Well, we've got it on the camera that she did it. I
It's
mean,
like, yeah,
with
no,
me here, so
wasn't
yeah,
me.
nope,
Oh,
not my car.
and you know what, Doug? I think to answer your question, a lot of it has to do with maturity because
Yeah.
early in my career, I would lie about something that be like, why would you lie about that? Nobody gets in trouble for that. But you think it's self-preservation. You don't realize that this is not, it's not self, you don't have enough time to know that you know what you should do, but you don't do the right thing. And it's only until you've had some grace bestowed upon you and that you've got a little bit of life experience.
Yeah.
I didn't have life experience when I became a cop. I, I got out of college, military call, all that nonsense. Not 24 years old. I mean,
Yep.
there's certainly a lot of 24-year-olds who have tons of life experience. I wasn't one of them. And
Yeah.
so I was a bit behind the eight ball. And so it took me to my late 20s to go, oh, Oh, okay. Like a little wise Yoda, you know. Now
Hmm.
I see what the deal is here.
Yep.
Um, so I don't know that it was anything you did or didn't do. I think a lot of it, unfortunately, just has to do with timing, grade, and just life experience.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's so preventable and it's so easy to get past. But
Yeah,
here we are with it, I guess.
yeah. Hey, I want to talk a little bit before we wrap up what you're doing now, because I think you're doing some really impactful things for this community, man.
A couple things. So I transitioned out of policing, retired out, and there were a few opportunities to go to some other departments. I'll tell you, I struggled a little bit with that decision of leaving and cutting the cord because I think well, I know I love the profession so much, but at some point we all got to leave it, right? You can't hang on forever. And we've seen what happens when people stay too long in things and it becomes their life and that's all they live for.
That's what
And
happened. Tom
yeah,
Brady. Tom Brady's in a
yeah,
perfect example. You know,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, exactly. And so I didn't want to be that guy. And so I went private sector and now work for a company called Peregrine, which is a technology company that helps police agencies do some incredible work to work so much more efficiently with all their data sources. And it's not, and I will tell you that the move to the private sector was a tough one for me because I'm not a huge fan of working with law enforcement policing vendors. So this company resonated much different with me because they just kind of get it. The co-founders they started work voluntarily for a year and a half in San Pablo, California to build a system at no cost to try and help policing better because they believe in the mission of policing. And
mm,
so that's pretty cool.
yeah, it
And,
is.
people walk the walk really well and they're truly partners as opposed to just a sales thing. And I don't do sales anyway. I work relationships. And I feel good with that. But I also, and the nice thing is they also support the other work that I do through the leadership advisor group of the ICP and also the work with the Curve with Simon. And I'm still allowed to contribute articles to Police One and encourage, not only allowed is the wrong word, encouraged to stay in the space and to keep moving forward and present at conferences and all those things. So I think all that together allows me to still be a part of something that I love so very dearly. I'm not on the beat anymore.
Right.
Not that I had been for a while. I'm same token, I'm not carrying two phones and not going to council meetings, all those kinds of things,
Yeah,
getting 2 a.m. calls, which is nice.
yeah, no doubt.
But I sure do miss the people a lot. That'll always be the case. But I'm blessed to have the opportunity I have now with Peregrine and doing the work with the Curve and continuing the work with the ICP and some other organizations to stay in the space and feel like I'm hopefully making an impact on things.
That's awesome, man. I gotta say, you're in this space and you're someone once told me that you think that your impact is in the first chapter,
Mm-hmm.
that and I think with when I say that the second chapter, that's where you were really allowed to shine, um, unrestrained, adding value to the people that you care about the most, who are still the folks out there doing this job that you did for over 30 years. I really appreciate you taking the time today, Doug. I know it took us a little bit to finally get our schedules to mesh, but I loved having this conversation. Just one parting word for the listener, brother. Um, the guy or girl that's out there, maybe on their way in or on their way home, that's out there still doing the job.
I would say first, you may not hear enough, but your work makes a difference and you're appreciated first and foremost. But secondarily, when you have those hard times, rely on the people that you care about and you trust, and don't be afraid to get whatever help you need to keep you moving forward because we care about you. And yeah, we just want to support in any way possible. But thanks for doing what you do. We couldn't be where we are without you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Shoemaker. Doug, thank you so much for taking the time, brother. It was great seeing you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you.
And that is that, my friend. Excellent, bro. Thank you.